Let's go! Barry Odom is out at Arkansas, but it's not because he was fired. It's because he got a promotion as the new UNLV head coach, according to reports. So, is this actually a good thing for the Arkansas Razorbacks? And the answer is actually a resounding yes, and I'm going to give you some really good reasons as to why, but obviously I do want to mention this. Drew Sanders, the guy you saw make the tackle in the background, has decided to go to the NFL draft. So, obviously, whatever Arkansas decides to do at defensive coordinator, they obviously need to do something quickly with the transfer portal being the way that it is now. Arkansas really needs to rebuild this defense as a lot of key transfers are probably going to leave, and just some key players in general on this defense are going to leave. So let's start with the obvious here. Barry Odom was a good defensive coordinator at Arkansas, right? Coming over from Missouri after being fired with the Tigers, he during his first two seasons at Arkansas, actually fielded really good defenses, most impressively in 2020 when the SEC was actually loaded with really good offenses, and including that Florida and Alabama offense, and Arkansas, with a bunch of new bodies, was able to be atop the SEC, or one of the leaders in the SEC when it comes to yards per play. But since then, this unit has gotten worse. In 2021, they were okay, but 2022, they were abysmal. Now, I'd be the first to tell you the Jalen Catalon injury was huge. Just injuries in general were huge to this team, but they were not a good defense this year. 13th in the SEC when it comes to yard per play. So that was obviously not good, and in particular where they sucked was in the secondary with some really Swiss cheese passing defenses. Overall, the unit just wasn't great, and look, if it wasn't for KJ Jefferson being a flat-out freaking baller, this team might not have gotten to that 6-win total. So, Barry Odom this year, yes, there was personnel issues. Yes, he had a really, really good performance against a hot LSU team. But other than that, I mean, this was just not a good year for the Arkansas defense. And this actually is a really, really good thing if you are Arkansas, right? Yes, Barry Odom has had one really good year, one meh year, and one bad year, but it was time for these two parties to split, right? Barry Odom, when he was at Missouri, he was actually a good head coach, right? It wasn't like he just made Missouri into a dump. They just wanted to go to a more offensive-minded head coach, and Eli Drinkwitz has done a really good job there. It was one of those things, though, where he's talented enough to be a head coach, and at some point he would have wanted to be a head coach again. Also, Arkansas just needs new blood amongst its coaching staff. I believe they should keep Kendall Briles if he doesn't take a head coaching job himself. But I do think there needed to be some type of shakeup after a very stale and under expectation year that Arkansas had this past year. So while I do believe Barry Odom was overall good, I do believe Barry Odom had a lot of excuses as to why this defense wasn't great this year. I also believe Barry Odom is a guy that needed to go. Boom! I'm looking at you. Yes, you right now. So, let's give you a few defensive coordinator candidates to keep an eye out for. And before I actually do that, I want to show a lot of love to the Razorback Nation. I feel like I've been neglecting you. I haven't done an Arkansas video in quite some time, but we finally get this big news story. Well, I truly do believe it's a good thing, even though for the most part, you've been pretty good with Barry Odom outside of this past year. So let's start off with, to me, one thing. Also, I do believe Sam Pittman has already been thinking about a few coordinator candidates simply because he had to have known at some point Barry Odom was going to get another job as a head coach. So let's start off with my top candidate, which is Ryan Walters, who is up for the Broyles Award as the defensive coordinator at Illinois. Now, he is currently with former Arkansas coach Brett Bielema at Illinois, and I got to be honest with you, Brett Bielema has a very favorable coaching style to a defensive coordinator, right? Illinois plays at a slower pace. They shorten the game. And, of course, it is easier to be a DC there than it is with a high-powered, high-paced, fast-paced offense. So Ryan Walters, like Barry Odom, is a former Missouri defensive coordinator who has just been phenomenal. Illinois did a really good job developing some talent. 31, their defensive back, his name slips to my mind, is a real deal. And Walters has just been really freaking good for them this year. Would he like to get back into the SEC? He is a younger guy. He is only 36, and I think some of you want some youth on that side of the football. So you have a guy with a ton of coordinator experience. He's super young, and obviously his best coordinating happened this past year. I do believe Arkansas should at least take a look at it, but Ryan Walters, along with this next candidate, is already getting a pretty penny, and I think they would view this move as lateral. And my next candidate is Blake Baker out of Missouri as well, the current defensive coordinator at Missouri. Blake Baker is a really, really sharp defensive mind. I was a big fan of his when he was the linebacker coach at LSU a few years ago. How he rebuilt that unit into being one of the better linebacking units in the SEC was very, very impressive. And Blake Baker is just a really sharp defensive mind who had a phenomenal year this year at Missouri. They did, though, extend him, and he is a seven-figure DC now. So once again, would he view this move as one that is a little too lateral? He might. So I don't know if those two candidates would be interested, but I love both of them because they're young, they're exciting, and they both have SEC experience. So now we get to two candidates I think would immediately take the Arkansas job. Starting off with the one with actual Power 5 coaching experience, and that is Tony White, a very talented defensive coordinator at Syracuse. Okay, so this has been a unit when it comes to yard per play that has been in the top 30 the past couple of years, and it's not as if Syracuse has a bunch of Dwight Freeneys on defense, right? This is a unit that has played above its talent level for a few years in a row, and Tony White is from the South. He's from the Florida region. So I think joining the SEC, one of the big conferences from Syracuse, would be something that would very much interest him. He's also on the younger side, so I think Tony White would be a wonderful, wonderful hire for an Arkansas defense that needs a new voice. Also, one thing I like about Tony White is this Arkansas defense. You know, at times I thought they just didn't play as physical as they normally have in years past, and I think that run defense will be tightened up. And I looked at Syracuse's defensive line. They had some undersized guys play on that line, and they played out of their minds at times this year. So I've got to give Tony White a lot of love, and he would be a wonderful defensive coordinator in the SEC. So yeah, Tony White went to high school in Texas, and man, you know, Texas obviously is a very key part of the Razorback program. And all three of the coaching candidates that I've given you up to this point have very heavy Southern ties. So I would really, really be interested in what you guys have to think about that. Now, before I give you this final candidate, this is going to be one that's not going to excite you at all. Please, once again, subscribe, ring the bell, and please get me to 1,000 subs. It's so close, yet so far, okay? Now, this one is also someone with Southern ties, and I really do believe Arkansas would benefit from someone with Louisiana ties. There have been so many great Razorbacks from the state of Louisiana, and that is Lance Guidry, a really talented coach at Marshall. Now, the reason why Lance isn't going to impress you as much as the other coaches is that he doesn't have Power 5 defensive coordinator experience, okay? But you also have to factor in that Arkansas isn't just some prime job either. So for me, I think a guy who, once again on the younger side, only 51, very young for a coach who's not been at a Power 5 job just yet. This is a guy that's going to be hungrier than pretty much any other DC are going to hire, because this would be his first real shot in the big leagues. And Marshall's defense this year was freaking incredible. Now, why is that very impressive? Well, it's because Marshall's offense also sucked. They were not good. And Lance still put up really big stats. And one thing about Lance is that, in one of his first games as a DC at Marshall, well, guess what? They pulled off one of the more shocking upsets on the season when they beat Notre Dame. So I like Lance a lot. I think he would be Lance a lot. A knight in shiny armor or whatever. That wasn't smooth at all. You get it, Lance? Anyway, I think you should give him a shot. I really do. Now, once again, I don't know if that's going to excite a lot of you, but who cares? You need something. Comment down below who you want as the next defensive coordinator. Maybe get an NFL position coach. I don't know. Just let me know. It is Power Hour SEC. Bam! And tonight we're doing taco soup. Let's go!